I am Darshini, PhD research scholar from University of Madras, here today to present on the topic Reframing Aging, an intersectional study on detouring representations of older men in Indian film narratives. Due to paucity of time, I'll try to be as brief as possible. I quote, "The visual permeates our daily lives, our academic work, and our conversations, and is inextricably interwoven with our personal identities, narratives, lifestyle, cultures, and societies. The visual is omnipresent and is an inevitable part of most communities around the globe. Filmic representations are both cultural and political. These representations echo a microcosm of everyday realities of larger pluralities, stimulating discussions to discourses on them. In this sense, the emergence and rise of approaches to film narratives contribute to a rectilinear progression of culture studies across disciplines. Old age and aging is one such discipline that is gaining momentum in terms of attention and discussion in the recent decades than it has ever been. Film narratives have contributed to significantly defining a new path towards approaching aging subjects and their varied representations. Traditionally confined to geriatrics and gerontology, it has evolved to cultural gerontology in the recent times, wherein films on aging present a nuanced world of the elderly in profoundly visual forms. At the outset of the dramatic demographic figures, the disproportionate realities of lagging policies, and the other crisis, such filmic depictions in recent times have been rewarding. In this context, the present study takes up Kadaisi Vivasai by Manikandan and Home by Rojan Thomas, which are two concurrent contemporary Indian films that present a close view of the fast-changing dynamics of the elderly representation, casting hexa-octogenarians as pivotal characters throughout the film. This article is a part of a broader research that proposes to trace the evolution of representation of elderly characters in select films over a decade. And the study has been consciously restricted to approaching the primary material, as Sir said, texts of aging, focusing more on the characterization and representation of the elderly and critiquing them as propagators of perspectives that aid the theoretical discussions beyond academic realms. It substantiates that these films are the doers of what can be called as the culturing of minds, shaping of perceptions into ideological systems of masses. They represent, I quote, "a possible world that cannot be assumed to reflect the reality outside the story world without a mediation." The stress here is on the mediation aspect of films that becomes an important aspect of the stories in gerontology. Now, I would like to quickly brief what this paper attempts to do, taking up one minor excerpt from it if time permits. The article provides a brief introduction to the evolution of the film field of gerontology, to the contemporary cultural turn it has taken up, and then it outlines the relevant theoretical foundations with relevance to this study. For example, narrativizing aging, film texts in gerontology, aging embodiment, and identities, leisures, conceptions, polyphony, and so on. On these founding ideas, the study foregrounds the two-tier function of film narratives in framing the inner and the outer worlds of the aged. This article presents an elaborate study of the select text from gerontological lenses, analyzing how the character of Mayandi and Oliver detour from the cliches and position these texts as what this study would postulate as neo-narratives in age studies, a reconstructive apparatus with a transformative potential of intersectional endeavors of age studies and film narratives that can favor myriad ways to clearing prevailing opacities within. For instance, Kadaisi Vivasai presents a visual substantiation on theoretical aspects of embodiment, intersectionality, and home of the third age. In the movie Home, the home itself, or in Kadaisi Vivasai, the home space in itself, are seen as important characters in the films. The home stations the elderly men of the household, presumably in their 60s, 80s, or 90s. Oliver's indoor gardens and Mayandi's farmlands are spaces of self-reflection and intimate memory of lost times, which they do not want to give up on yet. While Mayandi can be seen as a profound echo of resistance to the capitalistic booms and adherence to the habitus of the embodiment politics, Mayandi carries an innate spatial marker but also breaks the stereotypes at once. Film creators are in one sense echoes of the community that inspires them, irrespective of who is speaking, the ethnic background of the speaker. Both Oliver and Mayandi carry inspirations from any mundane old man, and this is a significant marker that evidences and propagates discussions on everyday activities of the elderly. Researchers are inferences drawn from existing empirical data that can permeate limited, sophisticated academic realms, while popular arts, especially film narratives, make possibilities to reach to a general public sphere. Visual impacts and pushes didactic aspects to greater extents. In that sense, an artist creating such sensible narratives that are neither exaggerations nor decline-centric essentialist ones facilitate an expansive propagation of complex theoretical aspects to a larger mass. In this sense, film narratives bridge the space between empirical knowledge, discourses, and the everyday realities, providing a third space that deconstructs epistemic constructs on old age, promoting a reconstruction of the same through alternate anti-essentialist discourse. Intersectionality in gerontological studies highlights the binary that divides the old and not so old, and also at the same time, the old on the grounds of various racial, class, gender, and so on aspects. So this evidently explains the differences in Mayandi's concerns and how they are different from that of Oliver and his father's concerns. It explains the divide between the farmland versus the domestic gardens, the negation of the external validation versus the digital challenge that Oliver undergoes. So while Mayandi rejects and chooses to stay devoid of the external dependence, government or communal, Oliver seeks validation from the family. So the two films present two different facets of gradual, naturalized marginalization of older people to invisibility in contemporary world. In case of Ho, it's retirement and the consequent loss of authority and autonomy of the male counterpart in an urban family, while in Kadesi Vivasai, it is more of how elderly people in peripheral rural intersections are seen as less than full citizens, I quote unquote, or not citizens at all for worse. So one makes stories or stories make one is a never-ending phenomenon. But I quote, if to narrativize is to engage in writing age, then aging in its turn is inherently bound to a narrative. I would like to close my talk with a hope that such sensible scripts get celebrated and pave the way to recognizing aging and old age as yet another marker of otherness in national and international spaces like this. Thank you, everyone.